Okay, hello class, my name is Carlos, and today I'm going to be talking about the motion picture industry. I'm here to respond to the claim that the quality of films has decreased since critical reviews are no longer held in importance. My opponent used four secondary claims to support this main claim. The first one was that studies have been done in regards to how critical reception affects box office. Firstly, this is not a claim. It simply shows research. Also, the advocate used an example from an article that says that good reviews can get people to see a smaller film. Negative reviews do not often drive people away. Therefore, filmmakers don't worry about critics, and they're just looking for profit. In my opinion, this example contradicts itself. Why? Because how would filmmakers wouldn't care of their reviews? If a filmmaker is looking to extend their profits, they will like good reviews. So this wouldn't make much sense. The advocate also failed to show how receptions in box office affect the film quality, which is his main claim. So this secondary claim wouldn't help that much for the main claim. The second secondary claim the advocate used is the factual information of sites such as Metacritic and Box Office Mojo show that low ratings do not create a box office flop. For this claim, the advocate used only 3 examples, and there are millions of movies. So that made me wonder if the data was biased. So I researched. According to an article titled "Determinants of Domestic Box Office Performance in the Motion Picture Industry," written by Neil Terry, low ratings do create a box office flop. The article shows research that according to a collection of 100 random movies, a high correlation appeared between movie ratings and profit. The third secondary claim my opponent used is that looking at the Academy Award Best Picture nominees for 2011, only one, The Help, passed the 100 million domestic mark. First of all, the advocate made an assumption that on average, Best Picture nominees have better critical reviews, which is not exactly true. He also lacked examples in this case, only giving us one, The Tree of Life. But how does passing the 100 million domestic mark help the quality of the film? That's simply the movie's profit. I'm going to get in a little bit of controversy here by claiming that, in my opinion, Twilight is a terrible movie. It lacks quality, but at the same time, it passed the $1 billion mark for its profit. So it doesn't really make sense trying to make a correlation between the movie's profit and its quality. The last secondary claim my opponent used is that many film critics have been fired in recent years. Although this statement is true, it only applies to part of the critics, for the people that make a career out of it. Film critics have only increased throughout the years. Thanks to the internet and other resources, anyone can be a movie critic, and rated on web pages such as Metacritic, which is the source my opponent used. We have one right here, our professor, a movie critic. He didn't make a career out of it, so he's not losing his job. The advocate also failed to address the fact that lots of critics are being hired by companies to help them improve their films. Over recent years, film journalism has perhaps unconsciously been considered a part of the film industry and expected to be a partner in Hollywood's commercial system. Although they are hired internally, more jobs are opening for this matter. So that doesn't really help to claim that the quality of films is decreasing, because there's a lot of movie critics. So in conclusion, the quality of films has indeed decreased, but not because of the lack of critic reviews. It is because maybe our expectations are going higher and higher every year. The movies are just getting better and better, and we're expecting more out of them than we were before. It may be too because of the movie's budget is spent more in special effects nowadays, rather than good scripts, which makes good movies. Anyhow, it's not lack of critics that affect quality. Instead, as quality is decreasing, there's a bigger need for reviews. Without criticism, we will achieve naivety. Thank you.
All right, Carlos, you follow the structure of the advocate's claim, I think, pretty effectively. I like the challenge that you have on the first point. The suggestion that there's a contradiction, I don't know that you sell that point very well. I think you've got a better argument here about whether that claim is relevant to the main proposition, but you need to explain it a little bit more why it wouldn't be considered relevant to that proposition. On the second point, it sounds like you're making this argument that this is based on a hasty generalization, and you've got a counterclaim suggesting that there are lots of counterexamples, which is fine, and I think that that is probably one of the strongest responses that you have in the argument. On the third point, you kind of explained what some presuppositions were. I thought it was kind of odd because you used Twilight as an example, and I think the advocate would probably be using Twilight as an example, because here's one of those films that is immune to criticism, that is successful, and maybe that's why the quality of films have gone down, because criticism hasn't been all that important now. We're just feeding the expectations of the audience here instead of worrying about the quality of the product. So I'm not sure that that point really advances your claim, and in fact it may be a point that supports the advocate's claim. I did think, though, that you had an interesting point at the end that suggested that the number of critics has actually increased. The number of paid critics has decreased, but that doesn't mean that criticism and evaluation is out the window and that people aren't paying attention to those things. The real question is, does that have any effect on the success of films or not? And one of the, defining the success of a movie as being over $100 million in box office is a little bit problematic, especially if you're talking just domestic box office as opposed to international box office, which might be important for some of these movies. But the other issue is, what is it to their relative cost? A film like The Help is relatively inexpensive to make, whereas some of the other films that might get all kinds of accolades might be more expensive, and they might make money, but they may not make as much money in proportion to their budget. I think that might be a good way to maybe analyze that argument. I do think there's a lot of ambiguity in what the advocate's argument was and what your argument is, and so sometimes it's a little hard to figure out where the conflict is on these points. I think both of you explore a number of issues on the subject, but I'm not always sure that there's conflict on those issues. All right, thank you.